We're gonna react to the reactions. New word, interaction. All day, every day, man. Let's see what's cracking out here on this net. The aliens landed, man. Aliens landed. What the aliens doing out here? Uh,
This one easy mistake will cost you thousands when buying a used.
man.
So
Real
this has
life
got
is
to be the
realer than
craziest thing I've seen
realer
this
than the
year.
movies,
This
man.
is coming in from Twitter. It was posted recently, I think, on November
Shout out to
27th, and
James.
the event happened on 20th. And got photos they received from their colleagues at Manchester Airport. So an alien orb, landed at the Manchester Airport. This is what's being said. And it's all over the internet. It's blowing up right now. And if you haven't heard of it, let's take a look at the videos, photos, and let's try to take a look at this deeper and see if we can find more information. Because after all, this is crazy. This is crazy. So let's take a look at the photos here first. This is a picture that was taken by a colleague of Captain Bigelow, and as you can see that there's an orb over there, right? Not sure if this is real. We could download this video, this picture. Okay, let's do that right now, and we can use certain websites to check if this is real. I'll do that in a minute. And then there's a blurred photo, because if there wasn't, there's got to be a blurred photo, or else it's not real, right? And then we got another photo here. I don't know what this is. And then we got a video. That's it. You gotta be joking me. Well, anyways, just the fact that you got this mysterious orb hovering above the airport at Manchester, it's not good. These things are not supposed to happen. Drones, whatever, it's not supposed to hover over an airport. It's illegal. This is all over the internet right now. So you got, this is on Reddit. Twitter, OP deleted his account. This is Captain Bigelow they were talking about. I assume probably got some hate from everywhere, somewhere. Yeah. It's a shame this is the world we live in. Luckily, this person made contact and got the OP's original files. So, yeah, I'm skeptical about this. We're gonna run this photo at a website that analyzes pictures to see if this could be real. But the thing is, it's all over the internet. It's being reported on different websites. A lot of people are talking about it, but I'm always skeptical about this kind of thing. So I don't want to be the person who says this happened. I don't want to be that person, okay? But this is crazy. Just the fact that this is being reported, that an alien orb landed at Manchester Airport. The original poster deleted his account.
That's the futuristic shit.
This is what he says, actually. Let's take a look at this. I thought I would chime in to clarify a few points of discussion. First, my name is not Bigelow. I will not reveal my true identity because I would like to remain anonymous. The last thing I want is for my name or that of the first officer to be broadcast across the internet for the world to see. Please respect that we are professionals and prefer to maintain discretion. Okay, that's cool. No problem with that. That said, I created a Twitter account to share these photos and videos with the world because I believe they need to be seen. I have been a pilot for a UK carrier for decades, and we know that what is normal and what is not. The photos and videos were taken by a colleague, so I can only pass on what has been said to me. But rest assured, we know what we are seeing in the sky. It is not a balloon or a drone, and it has been a hot topic of conversation in our community for quite some time. Well, it has. Now, there is a animated GIF of this object landing. Here you go. This is let's try to zoom in.
Rocks ain't supposed to fly.
What's being said is that this is a GIF, an animated GIF of the object taking off and landing. Now, there's a lot of, why? Why isn't there a video of this? A proper video? I mean, like, you're talking about an alien orb
How is it that motherfuckers
that
got
landed at
iPhones
UK
and Androids
airport. I
and
mean,
videos
there
with
should
blurry
be
still?
at least a couple of videos of it. happening. Let's run this photo here. Let's take a look at this. See if this is legit. Let's take a look at this picture over here.
Hi, my name is Alina, and I would like you to give you a few reasons why you should consider dating a young Slavic lady. You can choose a potential spouse from Ukraine, Russia, Belarus. Geography is boundless. Have you noticed that Slavic women have become more and more popular? I mean that they are everywhere, in famous magazines, on Instagram, as top bloggers, on the runways, and on the billboards. More importantly, they are in men's homes.
Let's upload the file and we are going to have an idea if this is somewhat, for example, it could be AI, it could be tempered, error level analysis. So this is what she was talking about. Interesting. When she says ELA good, is that there's no tempering in the picture. Interesting. So, yeah, ELA is good. When the picture is tempered, you will see like red, green, and other colors in the ELA. This is super crazy. Let's take a look at another one. Okay, so that's similar points. Photo cloning, point detection. No point detection on the object itself. Error analysis, level analysis is okay, which is weird. This is everything. This is super important. It has to pass this test. Noise analysis. Level sweep. That's weird. The principal component analysis, which I don't know exactly what this is. I would have to. We got these huge things in the sky. And what's crazy about this is that it seems to be behind the trees over here. I don't know if you can see that. I thought it could be water droplets on the camera lens or something like that. But if you take a look at this, the trees are in front of this thing, whatever it is. We got 3 of them. Okay, so yeah, okay, so, well, this is, apparently we have the same thing happening here. But still, it's weird. Okay, so I would say that these are water droplets. These are water droplets. You can see them in the picture. Right? Yeah, you got them here over here. Yeah, water droplets. Now, well, okay, so let's just say that this is real. It happened. This is crazy. Okay, so this is Captain Bigelow's account. This account doesn't exist anymore, so he deleted his account. He posted the exact coordinates on the runway where the was taken. Okay, so this is the coordinates.
He caught me creeping in there, creeping around them cuts in there in the house.
I'm not sure if it was indeed. It doesn't look like an iPhone picture. iPhone has a different contrast and all that. But I agree, it's very strange. Didn't I see a video where a guy said 29 days?
Oh, now we camping in there.
This guy.
For anybody who hasn't already heard, a gentleman named Cliff High, he's pretty much software back in 2009, predicts that Joe Rogan, he said following 39 days after there'll be a UFO down in our skies, get involved, as well as other UFOs. That was 28 days ago today. 11 days.
Okay, so that was 6
I
days.
got that ass. Lay it down, lay it down. Boy.
Oh my gosh, this guy posted this 6 days ago, so 11 days, that would mean that this would be December 3rd, I guess, right? Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I mean, again, I'm
Man,
being
keep your
skeptical
phones
about
out,
this.
boy, because them UFOs is out
Even
there.
if it happens,
To the skies.
it's the kind of thing that's,
I keep my eyes on the ground,
what's
because that's
going
where the
on.
money
We're
at
not
and
being
shit.
filled in. I mean, we
Motherfucker drop some money,
It's
he's gonna be
weird,
on the
you know,
ground.
like it's-
We be looking up too.
I don't know. I don't have a good feel. I don't get a good feeling out of this. You know what I mean? Like I don't get a feeling that this is legit. Extraterrestrials. It could be something else other than extraterrestrials. It could be kind of a new kind of technology.
Follow me on YouTube. Ace Will I Am. We out jit. Real life shit. Real life spit.
We're
Fuck.
living in crazy times, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to go into different topics here. This is not my kind of thing. But still,
Pluck it.
what's going on here? If there's
going
any
on here?
update on this, I will let you guys know. But I want to know your take. Leave a comment. Do you think that these are aliens?
Man,
Aliens
shit
finally
crazy out
landed
here,
just
man.
like we see in the
Aliens is
movies?
about to
Or
start
do you
talking.
think this is a new
Letting
kind of
niggas know
technology,
something.
maybe? And is this kind of thing gonna start happening more
Disclosure.
often? What's your take? Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like,
Man.
subscribe to the channel with notifications on. It's really
Give
important.
it up
Hit
to
that bell button,
James.
and I'll see you guys again.
He do his thing. Man, reaction. Let's crack it. High Priest of
Sometimes
Minneapolis.
the
What?
truth is stranger than fiction. And today's story
Sometimes
definitely
the
demonstrates
truth is
that.
stranger than
But
fiction.
before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in
Stranger
story
than
format,
fiction. Is there
you've
a
come to the
channel
right place
called that?
because that's
Let
all we
me know,
do,
folks.
and we upload
Is there a
once a
channel
week.
called Stranger
So
than
if that's of
Fiction?
interest
We're
to
gonna have to
you,
make that.
please offer to make the like button a nice
got
fresh
one
batch
for
of
you.
donuts, but instead of filling them with
Sure.
custard, fill them with mayonnaise. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
We're gonna have to mark him on this, man. Who out here?
On the
Squad
afternoon
up.
of July 18th, 1997, a man was driving down a road surrounded on both sides by trees in a rural part of Wisconsin called Douglas County. There were no other cars on the road, and so this guy was driving pretty fast. And as he rounded this bend in the road, something out the passenger side window on the side of the road in the grass caught his eye. He couldn't tell what it was, but it was a pretty big object. And after he drove right past it, he just couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, whatever it was, it just seemed out of place. And so for whatever reason, this man felt compelled to actually stop and go see what it was. So he slowed down and parked on the shoulder. He got out and began walking along the road back in the direction of this object. And as he got closer, he began to see this object again in the shoulder of the road. It was sort of obscured by grass and other things, so he couldn't see what it was. But as he got closer, he saw the object was pretty big and it was all white. And as he took a few more steps and got within maybe 20 or 30 feet, he finally got a better look at this object, and he just froze. Because the object was a man wearing all white, a white suit, a white belt, white shoes, all white, and he was laying on the side of the road, just totally motionless. And for a second, the driver thought, maybe this guy is sleeping. But after taking only a few more steps, getting a totally unobstructed view at this guy, he saw there was a gaping hole in this man's chest. He was obviously dead, and so the driver turned around, ran back to his car, sped to the nearest house, and called 911. The next morning, a Douglas County detective named Stephen Long was sitting at his desk looking at the photos of the dead man in white. This murder case was less than 24 hours old, but already this was one of the weirder cases that this detective had ever been assigned to. The victim had pretty much immediately been identified because he was carrying on his person his wallet, and in his wallet was his driver's license, and so they knew who he was. But the man in white's identity actually made the whole case more confusing, not less. And Mark had no obvious ties to the area. So what was this rich guy doing 3 hours from home, dressed all in white, getting shot to death on the side of the road? Like, it didn't add up. The dead man was a 45-year-old millionaire named Mark Foster. Mark lived 3 hours away in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and had no discernible ties to Douglas County. And so the detective was thinking, like, what is this rich guy doing here, dressed head to toe, all in white, getting murdered on the side of some local random back road? But things only got more confusing from there. After the medical examiner did Mark's autopsy, he told Detective Long that he had discovered a note inside of Mark's shoe. And the note just said, "Jack Frazier isn't here. but it's Jimmy Bailey, or a lookalike? I hope I'm okay. Now, nobody, including Detective Long, had any idea what this note meant. It was far too cryptic. But when they ran Jack Frazier and Jimmy Bailey's names through their database, the police discovered that both of those men, one, existed, and two, they lived in Minnesota, same as Mark Foster. And so naturally, Detective Long began to suspect that maybe those two men, were connected in some way to Mark Foster. Maybe they were involved in his murder, or maybe they were actually his killer or killers. He didn't know, but it was his best lead. So Detective Long decided he would just have to go to Minneapolis to try to find out more. A few hours later, Detective Long parked his car at the Minneapolis police station. He got out and walked inside the building. Waiting for him inside was the local detective who Mark had already spoken to. So after meeting this detective, the two of them went into an interview room where Mark Foster's wife was waiting for them. And right away, Detective Long noticed that she was very pregnant and at least 15 or 20 years younger than Mark. But despite that, she seemed very composed. It would turn out she had already been told about her husband's death, and she was basically resigned to the fact that she was here to try to answer questions to figure out what happened. And so the detective sat down and they began to interview her. And then when they brought up the note that was found in Mark's shoe, specifically when they said the two names that were on that note, Jack Frazier and Jimmy Bailey, when they said that, it triggered something in Mark Foster's wife. She immediately began to cry, and then in between sobs, she would tell the detectives that she knew who those two men were. She told them that she had previously had relationships with both of them before marrying Mark. And she said after she married Mark, Jack and Jimmy became very jealous. They didn't like the idea that she had chosen Mark over them. And so she had always felt like those two, Jack and Jimmy, sort of had it out for Mark as a result of this romantic rivalry. After the interview with Mark's wife ended, Detective Long began to think that, despite this case appearing on the surface to be very odd and confusing, that perhaps in reality, it was quite simple. Maybe Jimmy and Jack were so jealous of Mark that they killed Mark. Based on what Mark's wife had just told them in the interview about them being romantic rivals of Mark, and also the fact that that note was in Mark's shoe and named those two men, it certainly seemed very possible. But over the next couple of days that Detective Long began digging into this theory, that theory fell apart. Because it would turn out, Jack Frazier and Jimmy Bailey had absolutely airtight alibis. They simply couldn't have been the killers. Now, Detective Long was obviously frustrated. He felt like he really had it here. But he was not deterred. He decided his next move would be to try to better understand his victim. To this point, he had already interviewed a lot of Mark's friends and family, but something he had not done yet was simply go to Mark's house and have a look around. So Detective Long got a search warrant, and on July 29th, roughly a week after Mark was killed, Detective Long, along with another detective, pulled up in front of Mark Foster's large two-story home in the middle of a quiet suburban neighborhood. Now, from the outside, the home looked totally ordinary relative to its neighbors, but once they got inside the house, it was anything but.
Burnout. We all experience it at some point. It's so important to me that I've actually been working on it in therapy. In fact, with the help of BetterHelp, I've learned certain tactics and strategies to begin creating that balance for myself. It can be really, really difficult to set deliberate boundaries at work, with your friends, your family, and especially with yourself. It's a skill that only gets harder and harder to learn as you get older, and is something that I really value as a person who's trying to get just 1% better every single day. Now, I used to think therapy meant having to go into an office, but with BetterHelp, I can do it from the comfort of my own home on a schedule that works for me. Their brief questionnaire makes it...
The detectives made their way up to the front door and knocked. A few seconds later, Mark Foster's wife opened up the door and let them inside. And right away, Detective Long is looking around, and he's seeing all over the walls on the first floor of the house are these graphic pictures and paintings of naked people. And then in addition to that, on some of the coffee tables and various surfaces on the first floor, right when you walk in, are all these pornographic magazines and books everywhere. And Mark's wife didn't acknowledge any of it. She acted like it was completely normal to have all this stuff right in the front part of your house. And so the two detectives are looking at each other as, Mark's wife is leading them on this tour through the first floor. And at some point, Detective Long just said, hey, Mrs. Foster, why don't you have a seat on the couch and you just let us take a look around your house on our own? And so she said, okay. She sat down on the couch, and then the two detectives, they left the living room, went back to the front of the house, and made their way upstairs. And once they got upstairs, they found the master suite, and there was all this bondage gear inside. There were leather straps attached to the bedposts, there was whips and handcuffs, there was also additional pornographic material in there. But, I mean, considering what the detectives had seen downstairs, this sort of felt on par for this house. And so after searching the other bedrooms and other rooms on the second floor and finding more pornographic material basically everywhere, the detectives found their way back to the hallway in the second floor, and they noticed there was a rope hanging down from the ceiling, and it was attached to the pull door that led to the attic. And so the two detectives, they walked over, they pulled the rope down, it revealed this fold-out set of stairs that came down from the attic, and once those were in place, the two detectives began climbing up. And once they got up there, they discovered that this attic was not a storage space, like many attics are in American homes. Instead, this attic was a fully functional room that sort of resembled like a satanic dungeon of sorts. All the walls were totally jet black, and there were all these burned out candles all over the place and tarot cards littering the floor. And on the back of the attic, basically all the way on the other side, there was what appeared to be an altar that sort of overlooked the entire room. And on the altar were more candles, and there was a voodoo doll. I mean, it's totally creepy. And the two detectives are looking at each other like, what's going on here? And so the detectives, they climbed all the way into the attic, and then slowly began walking across towards the altar. And when they got close enough to actually see the altar up close, they just froze. Because sitting on the altar, in addition to the candles and the voodoo doll, were two business cards. Their own business cards.
Hey, it's Mr. Ballin here, and I am so excited to tell you all about a brand new podcast from Ballin Studios called Redacted, Declassified Mysteries, hosted by the incredible Luke LaManna. From covert government experiments to bizarre assassination attempts, Redacted dives deep into the astonishing true stories of uncovered secrets, lies, and deception within the world's most powerful institutions. Governments and military services around the globe have always cloaked themselves in secrecy. But history shows that when you try too hard to hide something, it only makes people more curious. Luke and his team have spent months researching these totally true and thoroughly twisted tales, guaranteed to keep you on the edge of your seat. Stories like the mind-bending truth behind Operation Paperclip, where former Nazi scientists were smuggled into America to advance U.S. technology and intelligence during the Cold War. Or the shocking story of Charles Manson and the CIA, revealing how a notorious cult leader might have been entangled in a web of covert operations. Trust me when I tell you, the stories are real and the secrets are shocking. Follow Redacted, Declassified Mysteries with Luke LaManna on the Wondery app or wherever else you get your podcasts. You can listen ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Spotify.
Lay down. Go to sleep.
Your iPhone 16 needs a mouse case. And here's why. When people get a new iPhone, the first thing they often do is open Amazon to grab the cheapest case they like. At first, these cheap poorly made cases might seem like a bargain, but then they end up costing you a fortune, leaving you with a broken phone, a broken heart, and broke. That's what makes Mouse different. We spent 10 years and millions of dollars refining phone cases. We moved to China, lived in a container, and then slept outside of the Apple store, all to deliver this. Limitless 5.0, our most advanced and protective phone case ever, designed with up to 38 highly engineered parts, airshop technology that absorbs and spreads out energy, microfiber to protect glass back, and most of all, it's constructed using real materials like walnut and aramid fiber to make your phone as safe and functional as possible. So, yes, other phone cases do exist, but after all the research we've done to make ours better, let us know, would you get one or not?
Oh, and in case we forgot to mention, we've put everything we've learned over the past 10 years into making seriously engineered mouse backpacks. Extreme protection, serious water resistance with complete functionality and ease of access. We've designed bags that do it all, so you don't have to compromise. And we've tested them in true mouse style. So yes, the iPhone 16 is here. And yes, these are our most advanced cases ever. But we are no longer just a phone case company. Mouse. Live without limits.
Get NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV to watch up to 4 games live at once with Multiview. Watch every game, every Sunday, all in one place. Sign up today. Terms and embargoes apply.
Detective Long and his partner immediately went downstairs and confronted Mark's wife about the attic. Like, what's going on up there? Why are our business cards on your altar? But Mark's wife, the second that attic was mentioned, went silent. She refused to speak about anything to do with the attic. And so after a minute, realizing this conversation was going nowhere, Detective Long and his partner called for backup. And as they waited for backup, the two of them stepped away from Mark's wife and began speculating, like, is this a cult? Was Mark a part of a cult that, like, ran it out of his attic? Like, what's going on here? And are we being targeted by the cult? Is that why our names are A few minutes later, backup arrived, and they would do a much more extensive search of the property. But other than finding more pornographic materials and, bondage gear, there really wasn't anything else substantive that connected Mark or his wife to what happened to Mark, or what Mark was even doing in this house. Was he in a cult? They didn't know. And so ultimately, Detective Long and his partner told Mark's wife, who still is being quiet at this point, that she should not leave town because they were going to follow up with her soon. Now, in fairness, Detective Long couldn't tell if Mark's wife was being silent and not talking about what was going on in her house because, she was complicit in some way in what happened to Mark, or if she was maybe being threatened by somebody and she was afraid to talk. They didn't know. But either way, after leaving the property after the search was over, Detective Long and his partner felt like their next move was to try to learn more about cults. They needed a cult expert. And it just so happened there was an occult bookstore very close to Mark's house. And so they decided they would start there. And right away, their decision to go to that bookstore paid dividends, but not how the detectives expected. It would turn out the owner of that bookstore was indeed a cult expert. But much more importantly, and relevant to this case, was that the owner happened to personally know Mark Foster. And he told the detectives that Mark came to his bookstore all the time, and also the owner said he knew a bunch of Mark's friends. And so by the time the detectives left the bookstore, they had learned a little bit about cults, but more importantly, they left with a list of names the owner had given them of known associates of Mark Foster who maybe were involved in whatever was going on in Mark's house. And so maybe they had information about what happened to Mark. The detectives were able to track down everybody on this list very quickly, and they were all young people in their 20s. And in each of the interviews they conducted, each of these young people were very open about being in what they called a religious group that they said Mark was a part of as well. Now, the detectives theorized that this religious group was very likely a cult, like they believed, but they didn't call it a cult. They called it a group. But the detectives didn't let up. They kept pressing these people until eventually a new name surfaced, Greg Freisner. Now, none of these people said Greg was in charge of the cult. Instead, they just sort of said, well, talk to Greg if you want more information about
out here.
The detectives naturally began to wonder if this Greg person was the cult leader, or maybe he was Mark's killer, or maybe he was both. But regardless, it seemed pretty apparent that they needed to talk to Greg because he might have more information about what happened to Mark. It took a few days, but the detectives were able to track Greg down, and they brought him in.
Don't run up. Don't run up.
Boy, did Greg have a story to tell. Based on what Greg told the detectives, here is what happened to Mark on the day that he died, on July 18th, 1997. On that day, Greg Freisner met Mark Foster at Mark's home. And when Mark came outside, he was dressed head to toe in white, something he would do for special ceremonies. And so Mark, he came down the steps, didn't say a word to Greg, went to Greg's car, Greg hopped in the driver's seat, and Mark climbed into the back seat. Before long, they took off and began driving northeast. And for hours, these two just drove in total silence. Mark just stared out the window, and Greg focused on driving. The only thing that happened during this multi-hour-long drive was at some point Mark pulled out a piece of paper from his coat pocket, and he wrote something on it. And then after staring at it, he kind of smiled and tucked it into his shoe. And then a little bit later, Greg pulled over on the side of the road in Douglas County, Wisconsin, on this random backcountry road. As soon as they pulled over, again without saying anything, Greg and Mark got out of the car, and they went around to the back of the car where the trunk was. The two men are kind of stretching. It's been a long drive.
Okay.
In the seat
Got your bitch ass. Got your bitch ass. What you thought this was?
In the trunk.
Take that. Take that.
Neither man have any strong reaction to this. Greg just reaches down, pulls the rifle out, and Mark, calm as can be, just begins walking over to the side of the road, to the shoulder. And then once he got to the shoulder, Greg came over and stood right in front of him and just looked intently into Mark's eyes, looking for the signal. And at some point, after Mark kind of composed himself, he nodded at Greg, at which point Greg raised that rifle, placed the barrel directly on Mark's chest, and fired. Mark crumpled to the ground, and he laid there for a second just moaning horribly, and Greg just stood over him watching until finally Mark went silent and died, at which point Greg casually went back to his car, got inside, and drove home. The only time he stopped was to throw his rifle into a nearby river. But once Greg got home, he was overjoyed because he knew the sacred ritual he had just carried out with Mark had been a total success. It had gone exactly to plan. It would turn out Mark Foster was absolutely a member of that religious group, the cult, if you will. Except he was not just a member. He was the cult's leader. And Mark is the one who orchestrated his own death. However, Mark did not view his death as him actually dying. Quite the opposite.
We celebrate life as we celebrate death. Death is nothing to be afraid of. Death is a great crossroads, a change in attitude, a change in longitude, a change in the way that we perceive our spirit. When we reach that portal, they'll ring some golden bell.
He believed that what he and Greg, his most devout follower, were going to do, this sacred ritual, was after Greg fires the shot into his chest and ends this body's life, that his soul, his consciousness, and his power will be transferred into Greg. Basically, his soul will go into Greg. And Mark believed once this transfer happened, that basically he would be immortal, that his soul would never die. It would stay in Greg and then maybe at some point get transferred to somebody else, but basically he would be here forever. The bizarre note that was found in Mark's shoe, the note that he wrote and stuffed in there, that note was designed to throw police off the trail. He knew that he was having Greg murder him, again for this ritual, but he wanted to make sure Greg didn't get caught. And so he wrote on the note very specifically Jack Frazier and Jimmy Bailey. Those two people he hated. He hated that they had been in past relationships with his wife, and they hated him, and so he figured if he was going to create a scapegoat for his murder, who better than his romantic rivals? They had nothing to do with it. He just named them in that cryptic note to get them in trouble.
Damn.
As for all the pornography and bondage gear that was found inside of Mark's home, well, that all played a role in Mark's cult as well. He was a firm believer that the more sex he had with his followers, often multiple followers at the same time, the more powerful he would become. As for the detective's business cards found on the altar up in the attic, those were very likely placed there by followers of Mark, so members of the cult, in an effort to potentially, thwart their efforts to solve the case. They might have believed that by placing those on there and performing various rituals, that somehow would prevent them from solving the case. We don't know for sure. That's the theory around why they were there, but obviously that didn't work because the detectives solved the case. Greg Freisner would ultimately be found guilty for playing a role in Mark's death. He obviously was the trigger man, and so he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. As for Mark's wife, although she definitely knew about the cult and may have been a participant, there was never any evidence that actually connected her to Mark's murder, and so she was never charged with any crime.
An American submarine, L2, was hurrying to assist a Portuguese freighter, which had been torpedoed near Padstow, when she had encountered UB-65 sitting motionless on the surface. As Lieutenant Augustine Grant prepared to give the order to sink the unsuspecting enemy vessel, he paused momentarily. Through his binoculars, he could see that the German submarine was already listing heavily to one side in the water. He could also make out the shape of a solitary officer standing up on the ship's deck, apparently staring out to sea. Before his excited men had even finished loading their submarine's torpedo tubes, Grant observed UB-65 suddenly shake, violently, as if she had been hit by a huge explosion, before she sank beneath the waves. For the next hour, the American vessel sailed back and forth, searching for survivors, but there were none. The haunted submarine had taken her entire crew down with her to her grave, and almost 90 years would pass before she was ever seen again.